I thank you all from LULAC, Iowa for being on this in the media. LULAC, Iowa has been taking on the fight against voter suppression for 8 years now. We started out on fighting voter suppression in 2012 when Secretary of State at the time, Matt Schultz, were attempting to purge voters from the 2 million voter registration roll who had Latino last names and also other immigrant names on the basis that he had a hunch that some people might have voted, might have registered to vote illegally using a database of Latino surnames and other immigrant surnames to compare that with registered voters, not acknowledging the fact that a number of people with Latino last names who may have been legal residents and not quite US citizens had become US citizens during the time that they had their driver's licenses. This purge that he attempted to do would have impacted thousands of registered voters from our community and other communities. Due to the work of through our effort and the ACLU, who were our attorneys, we were able to fight and stop this purge in 2012. In 2017, again, a voter ID bill was implemented in the state legislature that would have required voters to show certain forms of identifications when voting at the polls, requiring voters to provide a voter identification number when requesting absentee ballots, and authorizing county auditors to challenge or reject absentee applications and ballots based upon the signature of the voter, and then throwing out those requests on signatures that they, mostly volunteers, had assumed might not be the actual signatures. We won that battle as we won the first battle. We were able to protect the right to vote. The second time around, though, with the voter ID bill, literally based upon studies, had that voter ID bill been implemented in full force, 10% of Iowans would have been impacted by the signature verification and the requirements in doing the mail ballot request form. So we won our day in court last November, but here we are again with another voter ID bill that has been put in place. But this one is more devious. It is more evil engineering on voter suppression. This one, many voters will not even realize the impact of it until they request a ballot, because this bill allows or forces county election officials to not refer to their voter files, their databases on their computers when requests for mail ballots are sent in by voters. It would basically kick out a lot of opportunities for voters who have requested a ballot if they didn't provide all the information necessary on those ballot request forms. As we know in the past, and most people realize, years ago, over 40 years, Iowans only had to put a name, address, and possibly a social security number for a mail-in ballot. Now it's much more complicated than that, with a voter ID number or a driver's license or whatever. If any missing information is on this bill requires local election officials to have to Google information, to go online, to contact voters to get specific information, instead of allowing county election officials to just go to their data files. What's going to happen in this? Well, we saw the turnout on absentee ballot requests, the mail-in ballot this last time around. Over 500,000 people voted in the June primary. This time around, with over 2 million voters registered to vote, it's expected that, as with the June primaries, where over 79% of people voted by mail, this time around 79, 80, 85% or more will vote, and there will be up to 2 million registered voters who will vote by mail. If any missing information, if any information is not placed on the ballot request form, mail ballot request form, it is conceivable that local county election officials may not be able to provide those voters with a mail ballot. If that happens, there will be tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of voters who will not receive a ballot on election day or before election day to vote. This will cause chaos. This will go beyond the 10% that were expected to lose their right to vote back in 2017. We don't know what's going to happen. This is very evil engineering on the behalf of the Republican Party in the state legislature. I'm going to pass it now on to the next person, Nick. Go ahead, but that's my report.
Thanks, Joe. And now we'll hear from Jasmine Newton a little bit more about the law and what we plan to do.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you all for being on this call. Good afternoon. So absentee voting in Iowa has become more popular. In 2020 general election, about 21.2% voted by absentee. That figure increased to 41.3% in the 2016 general election. June 2nd, 2020, we saw a dramatic increase in absentee voting due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As a matter of fact, Iowa had recorded record-breaking turnout, and over 90% of Iowans cast their ballots absentee for the 2020 primary. On June 30th, 2020, Governor Kim Reynolds signed into law House File 2643. House File 2643 is a lengthy budget bill that was pushed through the middle of the night on the last day of the legislature's 2020 session. The law contains a section on voting that strikes out Iowa code language instructing local election commissioners to use the best means available in order to obtain the additional necessary information that a voter may have left out of an absentee ballot request form. If an absentee ballot request contains any mistakes or omissions, the new law requires county auditors to contact the applicant by phone or electronic mail within 24 hours of receipt of that absentee ballot. If they are unable to reach them by those means, then they have to send a letter seeking the missing data. Previously, county auditors would simply use voter registration system to obtain or verify information. Now, the county auditor is prohibited from doing so. The law specifically states a commissioner shall not use the voter registration system to obtain additional necessary information. Common errors on absentee ballot include transposing numbers on an address or writing down the last 4 digits of a social security number instead of the voter PIN. So what does this mean? This law will impact Iowans and their fundamental right to vote. The new mandate is cumbersome and lengthy. This additional hurdle will lead to unnecessary delay and increases in risk of disenfranchisement. For example, if someone puts the last 4 digits of their social security number instead of the voter PIN, in the past election, commissioners could verify all the information by looking at the voter registration system. The new law prevents that. This unnecessary barrier to absentee voting would be overly burdensome during ordinary times. However, these are not ordinary times. We are in the middle of a global pandemic. In Iowa, we have seen over 35,000 confirmed COVID-19 cases and an increase of 11% in just the last week. Similar language found in the new law has been previously struck down in 2017, as Joe Henry mentioned, in Polk County District Court, where the judge found it was irrational, illogical, and wholly unjustifiable. Section 124 of House File 2643 will abridge the right to vote and prevent voters from participating in Iowa elections by making it more difficult to cast absentee ballots. The state does not have a legitimate government interest to justify that law. It is our opinion it is unconstitutional during a global pandemic. LULAC will not sit idle as fundamental rights of Iowans are trampled. That is why we are challenging this law. Today, July 14th, 2020, the League of United Latin American Citizens of Iowa, along with Majority Forward, has filed a petition at law and equity against the Iowa Secretary of State, Paul Pate. LULAC seeks temporary and permanent injunctive relief, restraining the Iowa Secretary, Paul State, from enforcing and implementing Section 124 of House File 2643. LULAC also seeks declaratory judgment and implementing Section 124 of this House file as violating the Iowa Constitution. Now take it back to Nick Salazar.